Alliance's virtual conference, which is currently underway. Let's go straight back there.
Its political objectives obscure or interfere with its public duty to all South Africans. Therefore, in this form of a constitutional amendment I have proposed, requesting your support, delegates of the Congress, it seeks to ensure that the party governance matters are not left to someone at a certain office. Politicians should work hand in hand with each other and account to each other as peers, not find themselves reporting and taking instructions from an administrator from some office, from somewhere at the office. Allow me to employ an example of the FLC, which is a constitutionally recognized body of the party, made of party members in good standing, working independently, but very productively for the party. Ngiyabonga, Kevin. That's my submission, and I wish the Congress can support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. Seconding this motion is Sitembiso Ngema from KZN. Sitembiso is joining us online, so let's cross there now.
Good afternoon, Kevin and colleagues and all protocol observed. Let me start by saying political parties by nature represent a section of population and are voted in government by proportion of voters. As a result, political parties are primarily accountable to the members and supporters. In contrast, the state and its representatives are accountable to all and must operate in the interest of all in society. Therefore, it is only correct to keep the work of the politicians with the politicians, not with someone employed to work in the office. And this should be constitutionally enacted and to ensure legality of the separation. Therefore, I submit and I urge members to support this motion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sitembiso. Our first contributing speaker is Dean McPherson from KZN at the Tropicana Hotel. Dean, go ahead.
Thanks, Kevin. I think that this is a mix between a central command committee and a deployment committee, which is the very antithesis of what the DA believes in. It is not up to the DA to instruct mayors and premiers about what court action they may or may not take. That is a complete violation of the separation of powers. And we are not a deployment committee where that mayors and premiers must first get the advice of the federal executive on who they may or may not appoint. That is a deployment committee. It is what has caused the very ills of the ANC. It is factional in its very nature, and it is completely anti-DA, and I ask that you reject this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean. Our second speaker is Nicole Graham, also from the Tropicana Hotel in KwaZulu-Natal. Over to you, Nicole.
Thanks, Kevin. I think it's very important that we, whilst supporting our governments and providing our governments with the tools they need to function effectively, that we also ensure that our governments aren't given instructions by the party at all times, that they have a degree of autonomy and that there is a reasonable distinction between party and state. And I think that if we create some kind of committee that is able to take decisions as some kind of command council, as Dean said, we're putting ourselves in a very precarious position. So I think that the idea is to support and create capacity where we govern, but not to give our governments instructions or to make deployments as some kind of central command. That's very dangerous territory.
Thank you, Nicole. The last speaker on this item is Ashel Sarapin from Gauteng, joining us online. Go ahead, Ashel.
Thanks, Kevin. Kevin, separation of party and state is a fundamental principle of the party. And as Dean said, this creates a central deployment committee, which is against our values. But Mr. Mashaba claiming that he had no support from the party when he was mayor was actual political spin. We have a whole governance unit that offers support insight into legislation and provides administrative reports to the party and its governments. But the day-to-day running of government must be and should be left to elected premiers and mayors who have a constitutional mandate. This is why we elect them. They're elected in the manifesto, must implement the DA manifesto, and our job should be to be holding them to the DA manifesto. We should hold our governments to account, but not have a Letsuli house set up that interferes in our governments like this. I urge delegates to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashore. The Constitutional Review Committee recommends supporting this. Not supporting this. I apologize, mixing up my papers here. Recommends not supporting this amendment because while it purports to promote the separation of party and state, it actually does the exact opposite. Monitoring and support of DA governments is done through the governance unit at FHO, and the federal executive, after consultation with the relevant provincial structures, already decides on the composition of mayoral committees and executive councils and the formation of coalition governments. So we do not support the as proposed. Next up, we have Amendment 29. This has been proposed by Jordan Hill-Lewis and Leon Schreiber, and it proposes excluding provincial leaders from selection panels. I'm going to ask Jordan Hill-Lewis to motivate his amendment, please.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and good afternoon, colleagues around South Africa. The DA prides itself on having a candidate selection process and system which delivers the outcomes of the open opportunity society for all, and which delivers candidates of merit, and importantly, which is not susceptible to control by whomever happens to be in charge or in leadership at any one time. We should aim to protect that selection process because it is fundamental to what makes us different from our competitors, as we've just discussed in the previous amendment. We should protect the sanctity of the selection panel process from even the potential of the invasion of patronage politics into that process. Provincial leaders already have very significant influence on the candidate selection process through the selection of selection panel members and as being part of the relevant executive after the list has been determined. Lastly, this amendment confirms a decision that has already been made by our Federal Council last year in 2018, in fact, before the previous election, and puts it into our Constitution. Therefore, I would ask for your support, your kind support for this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordan. Seconding this amendment is Leon Schreiber from the Western Cape. He's joining us online, so let's go over there now.
Hi, Kevin, and good afternoon to all the colleagues. I'd just like to second this proposal on the basis that really the secret to the DA difference that we observe in all the places we govern, and as we move forward, hopefully obtaining power in more places around the country, is the fact that we are able to select our representatives on the basis of their skill and competence, rather than on the kind of cadre deployment and political loyalty that we see that has really damaged the fiber of the state in South Africa. So as Jordan mentions, this is a resolution that is in keeping with some of the earlier decisions the party has pronounced on. I think it's also in keeping with the spirit of a lot of amendments we've seen today in order to build that firewall between any potential for political patronage and ensuring that we're able to select the best people, but still having the appropriate role for provincial leaders at the beginning and during the later steps of the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leon. We have 4 contributing speakers. The first is Jeffrey Chavumo from Limpopo. He's joining us online. Jeffrey, you have 45 seconds.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all the delegates. Provincial leaders have a role to provide leadership within the province. They do not have to be found or to be seen in with elections. And it is also important that as delegates, we support this amendment to ensure there is no contamination or no forced wish list of any provincial leader in selections. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Up next, we have Ashul Sarapin from Gauteng joining us online. Your comments, Ashul?
Yes, thanks, Kevin. With regards to this, we need to remember that provincial leaders sit on the relevant executive that are allowed to adjust 10% of the lists. And so it does create a conflict of interest when you get to sit in the panel to intimate who gets to be on a list and then get to adjust the list again. So I do think this amendment is worthwhile and I do support it 100%. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashul. The third speaker is Zwakele Mkwango from KwaZulu-Natal. He's joining us online. Your comments, Wax?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Kevin, I do support the amendment, but I would have loved if the party or the Congress have allowed provinces to decide on the issue whether they believe provincial leaders in their respective provinces should be part of these panels or not, and also have an option of not being an electoral college. But I do support the amendment as is, because I do believe that sometimes you can't play a role in all processes. Somewhere you need to allow the process to take its place without any interference politically. Thanks.
Thank you, Zwakele. The last speaker is Pogiso Mtemunye from Gauteng. Let's have it, Pogiso.
Thanks again, Kevin. I think a large part of the DA difference that we speak about with so much pride is the impartiality and openness of our processes. And we counterpose that against most of our rivals who are known for reward and patronage politics. And I think this amendment is a step forward in moving towards removing tendency to have an outsized influence on things like selection panels and those types of progression. In these things, we're also reducing the scope for a situation where people are rewarded for certain support or certain other activities. Not saying that these things happen, but it's key for the organizational process to reduce the scope and the opportunity for such type of reward and nepotism and on those type of activities. So this is a good step forward, and I think eventually we'll get to the ideal part we want that's impartial and open.
Thank you. Your time is up. Please conclude.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Pogiso. As indicated, the Constitutional Review Committee recommends supporting that amendment. And with that, we're now going to open the polls on amendments 27, 28, and 29.
And while those voting on those amendments get underway, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll tell you some of the leading stories apart from the Democratic Alliance.